Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we are going to look at how to properly enter case notes into ServicePoint, which is the HMIS system we use here in Montgomery County. This is going to be a pretty long training today, so I want us to get right into it. We're already in the client's account, George Jetson, and we're here on the Case Plans tab, which is where you do all of your case notes. Just as a reminder, you start off on the summary screen here, but you're going to be going to Case Plans to do your case notes. Now, to do case notes in HMIS, you're going to be clicking on the Add Goal button. It's worth noting that when you're doing case notes here in Montgomery County, you are not doing one large case note, like, oh, here's George Jetson, he's our client, here's everything we talked about. You're going to break it down into specific compartmentalized goals. Each client's going to be different. So some clients are going to have different goals from other clients. Some clients are only going to have a few goals. Some clients are going to have lots of goals. So remember, there is no set universal way of determining how many goals a client is going to have. That's going to be up to you as the case manager and how many goals you think it's possible for the client to get through. Again, we aren't going to be doing one giant note. We are going to be compartmentalizing it down into specific goals and only talking about those specific goals in each case note section. So let's give it a try here. We're going to click on Add Goal. This is going to bring up the goal screen where you're going to create your goal. Because George Jetson is in a family, we want to decide if we want to have the case notes populate into all of the family as well. It's probably a good idea to do that. So to do that, we click on the button by the family. This is household ID 14, two-parent family. If we click on it, every member of the family now has a check mark. And what that will do is pre-populate and duplicate the notes into each of the accounts. So Astro, Elroy, Jane, and Judy, the note that we create, the goal, and every associated case note with it will be entered into each member of the family as well. Provider. Your provider should start off with who you are doing enter data as with. Remember, you always want to EDA as the program that you are going to be doing data entry for as soon as you log into HMIS. If you are not sure what we mean by enter data as, that is a completely separate training. You should have seen it by now by the time we get to case notes. If you have not, I'm going to recommend that you watch and or read that training and come back to this one, because enter data as is the first step you do as soon as you go into the system. And if you don't do it, none of your work's going to count. So remember, if you are doing enter data as correctly, the provider you want to do work for should automatically populate here under provider. If it doesn't, we click search and we look for the program. In this case, we're going to do with Montgomery County Continuum of Care, but you can do a search for other programs here. Say you want to look for Rainbow Place. There we go. You could choose Rainbow Place. But we're going to stick with Montgomery County Continuum of Care here. Case manager. Anyone that has ever worked with the client is going to show up on this drop-down menu. If your name does not show up on this drop-down menu, it means you did not set yourself up as the case manager correctly on the Case Manager tab. Again, we have a separate recorded and or PowerPoint training for the Case Manager tab. So if you're not sure how to do the Case Manager tab, stop this, go back to the Case Manager training and review that. You cannot set yourself up as the case manager unless you've done the Case Manager tab correctly. So if your name does not show up here, you need to stop what you're doing, go to the Case Manager tab and set that up. Date the goal was set. This is going to default to today's date. Today is June 29th. This is going to default to June 29th. You want to change it to the actual date the goal was set, the date that you and the client came up and decided this is the day you're going to do the goal. For test purposes, we're going to choose June 1st, even though you shouldn't be entering notes a month after you actually did them. You should be entering them into the system pretty close to real time. Now for classification and type. Classification is going to give you this big, long drop-down menu here. Type is going to be completely blank until you choose your classification. You're going to be choosing what type of goal you want to create here. Classification is a general broad goal, where type is more of a specific goal. And we want to make sure that we choose the right option. So let's look at classification. We have all these options here. If we chose, say, employment, type will now work with these 3 options for your specific type of goal. If we went into, say, education, the type's going to change to this huge drop-down menu ranging from graduate high school to obtain a GED. If we choose housing, we're going to get all these different types of housing goals. Housing is going to be a pretty common one for us as case managers here in Montgomery County. General case note is another good option. It's a catch-all, participation in case management, that you can use as a catch-all for anything that isn't a specific honed-in goal. So let's say we're going to choose general case note here as our first example. Goal description. Goal description is going to be what is the end game for this goal. It is a blank text box. You are allowed to use your own voice, your own verbiage. We just want to know what you and the client are trying to achieve. You must fill out the goal description. If you don't, we're going to come back and be like, this goal doesn't count. You don't have a description in here. So here's the goal we've decided for general case management. Participating in case management and the goal description, client and case manager are going to work together to identify obstacles in the client's life and generate ways to overcome them. We can use this as a generic catch-all goal for things that don't fall into one of the more specific goals that we create. Target date. Target date is when do you think this will be accomplished by? Some goals are not going to have a target date. If you're talking about dealing with addiction or trying to maintain sobriety, that is a lifelong struggle. There's not going to be a target date when you magically cure this. If, however, you are trying to get the client a GED and you know the GED test is on September 1st, the goal date should probably be September 1st. That's the date to take the test and get that GED. So the target date is open-ended. It's going to be variable. Some goals are going to have a target date, some are not. In this case, this is just general case management. It's not going to have a goal. We're going to do a second goal right after this, and then we'll show you what it looks like with the target date. Overall status, as soon as you've created the goal, you're going to go to in progress. If you complete a goal, we're going to change it to closed and choose one of these: abandoned, achieved, goal revised, partially achieved. What is the outcome of the goal? Until it is finished, however, it's going to be in progress. This section right here will allow you to create a follow-up note. I'm not going to do that here right now, but we are going to come right back to it. I'm going to add goal. And now we have created the goal. Once we've created the goal, it's going to generate on your case plan home screen. And you also now have the ability to do case notes and action steps. It also generates service items for this goal. We do not do this in Montgomery County, so do not worry about service items. What you need to worry about are case notes and action steps. First, let's go back to this projected follow-up date. I want to go out of here and go back to the home screen for a second. When you create a follow-up, it's going to generate a reminder here in your follow-up list. This is optional. This is not something you have to do. But let's show you what it looks like and see if this is something that you feel will be helpful to you as a case manager. Right? So let's say the follow-up date is going to be 07/01/2021. Montgomery County, we can choose whose account I want this to show up in. So it doesn't necessarily have to be me, but we are going to choose me. Because maybe you're going to be out and that's why you're setting the follow-up, like, oh, you're going to be out on vacation and you want to give it to another case manager, go, hey, I know this is normally your client. Can you follow up with them for me? All right, we're going to put that in. We've got the follow-up. And if we hit save and exit, we can see the various goals that we've tried to do here. Now, why did 5 different goals come up? Because there's 5 different members of the family and it's all connected. Remember, we connected the goals together. So 8 is George, 9 might be Jane, 10 is probably Elroy, 11 Judy, 39 Astro. You can click on there to be sure. But because we connected all 5 family members together in that goal, all 5 are going to show up here on my follow-up list. And it's a reminder that I have to check in with them on 2 days. It's not necessarily something you have to do, but it is optional, and that's where it will show up, and that's what it looks like. Let's get back to doing case notes. All right. So let's talk actual case notes. Excuse me. There are 2 places that we can enter our case notes at. The first is here on the case plan screen. We have a notepad. We click the notepad. We click add case note. This case note pop-up shows up. The other option is to click on the pencil. And then we are going to click add case note here. The same pop-up shows up. So you have 2 different ways to get there. You can either click on the pencil and add case note here, or we can click on the notepad and add case note here. We want to make sure everything is correct. Everyone's checked. That's fine. We chose to do that, so that's good. Provider. This should be the provider you set up as the goal. If this is not the right provider, it means you did not set up the right provider in the goal, and you need to go back and fix that. Otherwise, your notes are going to be connected to the wrong provider. We chose Montgomery County Continuum of Care at the beginning when we set this goal. And so we're going to stick with that. Case manager, Alex Lucard. We did our case note. We're going to say we did this on 6/1, and we're going to create a case note. All right, so this is our first note under the general case note. We talked with George, we did some small talk, we learned about his family, we learned he wants to start working. We're going to meet back in a week, and we're going to create an employment goal. That's a general catch-all case note. We save case note, right? And there it is. We've saved our case note. We can see the work that we've done. All right. And now it's going to show up as a note here. Notes. And for each note that you enter, this number is going to change. The next note we do for this goal, it's going to be 2, then it's going to be 3, then it's going to be 4, then it's going to be 5, all the way up to 9. And after 9, it's going to become 9+. And so we can see here, have a good idea of how many notes there are. Goal was set on 6/1. The first note was on 6/1. And this is letting us learn more about the client, how many notes he has, and the last time it was updated. You should be updating your case notes once a month. Every goal should have a case note once a month, even if that note is there is no progress on the goal this month. That's going to help you to get in that rhythm. It's going to make sure you remember to update each goal. It's going to give something for the contract managers to look at and go, hey, I see you haven't updated this goal in a couple of months. How come? It's still open. Things like that. So we want to try and get each goal updated once a month just to get you in the rhythm of doing it. Now, we talked about in this example that we're going to meet up and do an employment goal for Mr. George Jetson. So let's do that now. So we can take a look at yet another goal. We're going to do this. Case manager again. We're going to say that we met on 6/8. Classification. We're going to talk employment. Type, obtain employment. We fill in the goal description. There we go. So we're creating a goal, and now we can do a target date. Let's say he wants to have a job by the end of the year. We're giving him a little extra leeway because we're coming out of the pandemic. So we do that. Overall status in progress, right? Add goal. We now have the case note and action steps option again. Here, now we can see we have 2 different case notes active. Some clients are going to have like 6 or 8 goals active at once. Some might only have 1 or 2. It's going to depend on the client. Remember, every program is different. Every program is contractually obligated to do case notes in a different way. So one program might have to have 3 specific goals, that they have to use for each client. One program might not have any specific goals. They just have to do case notes of some accord. So check with your contract, check with your program manager and director, check with your contract monitor, because again, this is a general overview of case notes. This is not a specific PSH or a specific program within PSH case notes. This is a general overview to give you how case notes are done in Service Point. So please check your contract. Please check with your supervisor to make sure that you know if there is a specific goal that you're supposed to be doing for clients and if there's a specific frequency. Excuse me again. Now we've created the goal. Let's do a note. Case note. Again, we're going to say this happened on 6/8. Case manager. It's still processing for some reason. System's a little slow. Let's go back out and try this again. All right, we've got an error here. Good to know. I'm going to log out. And this can happen. See, we're having a bunch of errors here. And this can happen with the system sometimes. All right, let's go back in. All right, there we go. And so sometimes this is a good learning example of sometimes the system is slow, sometimes the system's under maintenance, and sometimes we will have slowdown no matter how good your internet connection is. So lesson learned. So let's do a note for George here. So And in fact, this brings up a good point, and I want to stop right now to explain this. So here we're mentioning the client by his first name. George decided to enter the workforce. George feels he can get back to mid-level management. Now, you normally wouldn't actually refer to them by the name. I personally prefer to go case manager and client. Some people do use the actual name, but again, this is a blank spot here for you. And I wanted to showcase, because if you notice in the first note that I did, I chose case manager and then I did George. So you can do whichever feels more comfortable for you, but for security reasons, I like to not have identifiers in there. So you could change this, not case manager. You can change this to client, just to be safe. Because although HMIS is a very secure system, what if you, the case manager, do something really bad and create a HIPAA violation by leaving this up on your computer instead of logging out? So we want to try and keep the identifying information to a minimum. And I know we can see George Jetson right up here, but it's still best practices. Let's take a look. All right, so here's our note. You can see it's a paragraph, and we talked about creating a resume. So this is where action steps come into play. We save the case note. And an action step is any task that we as the case manager assign the client. Now, there are some clients that will want you to do all the work for them. They'll want you to do every little thing for them. They don't want to put in the effort. They don't want to put in the work. While other clients are really motivated. They want to get out of this situation. They want to pull themselves up. They want to do all this work. They feel that they can do it all on their own, but they're not necessarily focused. And that's where these action steps come into play. Action steps are something that you, as the case manager, assign the client to do as a task. Basically, case management homework, social work homework, if you want to call it that. So where do we do action steps? We're going to put action steps here under the note itself. All right, we've got an employment, and we're going to create an employment action step. We click on the pencil, and down here is where the action steps are. Unlike case notes and the file attachments, which we're going to look at in a bit, action steps are only here under the actual goal itself. So remember, we click on the pencil, and that takes us all the way down here to the action step. We can see the note that we've just done, but right now we're going to do an action step. We click action step, provider, still the same provider. We're going to change the date to the date the homework was assigned. And what was the action step? All right, so our target date will be a week later, 06/15/2021. Overall status, in progress, right? And then we save. And there's our action step. And let's say a week later, he does come back with the resume. We go in, we click on the pencil. We're going to change it to closed. Now we're going to say he achieved it. Right? And then let's also put in another note here. We do a note of 6:15. But first, let's talk about the occasional issue that we have, the error that we make, right? So this is important because we've been talking about making sure that the notes are done on the date that they actually happen. And if you remember, if we've been looking at the notes correctly, we started the employment goal on 6/8, but the note we created has a date of 6/29 because it defaulted to today's date and we didn't fix it. Oh no, how do we fix that? What happens when we make a mistake with a note? Well, this is really important because that can happen, especially if you accidentally put a client's note under the wrong client. Like let's say you put Bob Smith's case note, who has HIV and bipolar disorder, under George Jetson's account. You want to get rid of that, right? You don't want to make a HIPAA violation by accidentally tweaking out the information. So that's why we have the ability to edit and delete. In this case, we want to edit the note to make sure it has the right date of 6/8. All right, hit save case note. And there we fix the date. So in some COCs, like DC, for example, you can't edit a case note, you can't delete a case note. All you can do is delete the entire goal and reduplicate it from scratch. Here in Montgomery County, we do give you the ability to edit and delete case notes, which is fantastic. It cuts down on HIPAA violations, it cuts down on errors. We can edit the note, we can edit the note date. So this is really important, and it's a distinction I wanted to make sure that we covered here, because it is very, very important that we don't mess up things like the date, or like I said, put someone else's note in the wrong client. So let's go back and let's do this note here as we wait for it to load. We're gonna add a case note, and this case note is going to be on 6/15, right? So their resume. That finally loaded up. Let's pull it up. So there we go. We've made a new note, right? He's going to start applying to 2 jobs a week. We've looked at the resume and we can save the note. Now, in this note, we've also generated a new task to assign the client. What's the task? He's going to apply for a minimum of 2 jobs a week. So what does that mean? It means we're going back and we're doing a new action step for the client. We're going to do an action step on 6/15. All right. And then we can keep this a little more open-ended. Since we're trying to get a job by the end of the year, we can set the target date for the end of the year as well. We can set this in progress, and this is going to be a long-ended action step. Now you can assign clients as many action steps as you want. You could have like 3 or 4 of them open if you needed to, but you also don't want to overwhelm or overload the client. So sometimes it's really good only to have one at a time, depending on the client's skill level and initiative. You might be able to have more than one open, but in this case, we're starting to generate a nice list, a nice history of the client on this specific goal. Our case notes are in ascending chronological order. We can see the history of the action steps that we've done, and we're getting a really good set of case management here for this client on this specific goal. And we'd just be going back every time we meet with the client and updating the records. Again, a minimum of once a month for an update to each goal. And that's all there is to case notes. There is one more thing I want to show you before we end this training, however. This is the case plan file attachment. Now, this is completely optional. You might use it, you might not, but it's worth talking about, just like we showed you with the notes on the home screen. So when do we use this? Well, in this case, we've been talking about employment. Maybe we're going to upload a job offer letter, so we have proof that he's been offered a job. Maybe we're going to upload proof that the client applied for a new Social Security card or birth certificate, and we've just put in the receipt, or maybe we even scan in a copy of that document. If the client is trying to get a GED, maybe we scan in the diploma that says, hey, you have achieved your GED. There's lots of things that we can do with this. It's optional, but we're just going to show you how it works so you understand how it works. Pretty simple, right? We click add new file attachment, and this brings up a screen similar to what you have in Outlook. You choose the file. Let's say in this case, we're going to choose, oh, hey, case notes. Description, you fill in what exactly you're uploading. Upload. And this will take a little bit of time depending on how big the document is. And of course, the system's running really, really slowly while we're doing this recording. So who knows if it will even work, right? And it looks like it's crashed. Let's try this again. Let's choose a smaller file because that is actually a pretty long. Let's choose a really small text document here. Yeah, we'll just do this. And let's see if we can get it to work here this time. There we go. So the first file I tried is really long. It's the biggest PowerPoint that I've made since I've been in this job, so that explains it. But we can see case plans file attachment, and we can see what date was it added, what's the name, what's a description, here's a file, what type of file is it, Excel, and who uploaded it, Montgomery County Continuum of Care. And so we can just upload documents like that. If you don't want the document in there after all, or you've uploaded the wrong document, we can delete it. Right? Processor. And eventually this will delete. Unfortunately, of course, the system is extremely slow today while we're doing this recording. But this is all there is in regards to case notes. We've looked at how to create a goal, how to do case notes, how to do action steps, how to upload a document, which is really, really slow today, how to delete the document if you need to, how to fix an error with your case notes. We've covered it all. So I know this is a long training, but it's a really important one that we needed to get through. So thank you for joining with me today. I'm sorry we had so many technical maladies in this training, but law of averages says it's going to happen in one of these recordings, right? So again, this is all we've got for case notes. There is a PowerPoint version of this as well. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us on the HMIS team. Thank you for joining me with this training, and hopefully future ones will not be this buggy. Thanks and have a great day.